Welcome everyone. Good morning. If you were in a morning now, or good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. This is one of our final sessions for this year's EAMS conference. And we have with us Dr. Colin Steele and his colleague, Dr. Igor Chernyavsky. They're from the University of Manchester. And they're going to present on exams by e-assessment, long-term movement, or short-term reaction. This is certainly a very interesting topic, and we have all been dealing with e-assessment over the last few months or almost a couple of years. So I look forward to hearing from them. First, we are going to see a recorded presentation, and then we will have time for question and answers. Chris has so kindly put the link for the questions in chat, so follow that and post your questions on Moodle. I'm going to hand over to Colin now for him to begin the presentation. Are you able to do that, Colin? You are on mute, Colin.
Yes, I'm still slightly away from logging in on my other machine. Can it be done from the other end?
Chris?
Yep, I can play the video.
Yes,
yep.
About that.
So
Thanks.
Chris is going to...
Good morning everybody, welcome. We've called this talk Exams by E-Assessment, Long-Term Movement or Short-Term Reaction. And it follows the evolution, or otherwise, of the role of computerized assessment in some of our course units at Manchester in recent years. Now, recent years have been eventful at the University of Manchester, just like everywhere else. They've been eventful in the Department of Mathematics for our teaching to maths students and indeed to students in many other departments. We have been using e-assessment for a number of years now, and we've seen a gradual evolution onto the use of STACK. You can see starting at around 2008 here, with a big breakthrough being when we were able to connect through Blackboard to STACK. It has been, up until very recent years, used mainly for coursework tests and a lot for students taking our service courses. Let us consider three of the service courses. We have course Maths 0B1 with its code here 19801. This is a course given to our foundation year students, students that will be in the first year of one of the departments in our science and engineering faculty the next year. It's one of the calculus and algebra courses in semester 1. There is a different calculus and algebra course for maybe some less mathematically proficient foundation year students. We have Maths 1M2, this is in the second semester, given to students in our Department of Mechanical, Aerospace and Civil Engineering. And then we have a second year course, Maths 2E1, first semester of the second year. This is a course on Laplace transforms, vector calculus, linear algebra, to students in the Department of Electrical and Electronic Engineering. The two topics, Laplace transforms and vector calculus, are given by my co-author, Dr. Chernyavsky, with a further academic carrying out the linear algebra part. So let's cast our minds back to 2019 or earlier, and I've called this an era of blissful ignorance. We didn't know what was to come. Most courses were given in a traditional manner, 2 lectures and 1 tutorial per week. There were, of course, various thoughts about, well, should we be doing it this way? Can we be doing things in other ways? Already on the coursework, yes, a fair number of course units were using Stack or Blackboard or possibly something else for the coursework, the in-semester coursework, but exams were carried out in traditional format. So that's what we could consider to be the base that we're working from. For example, in 2019, with the Semester 2 course happening in the early part of 2019, yes, we had 2 Stack assignments. Those were done in a manner that we found worked quite well. Students could have a practice quiz, which they could do an unlimited number of times, and they would have a single go at an assessment quiz. Now, my nomenclature of practice and assessment I'm not quite happy with. I've consulted about students on better terminology there, but the best practice counts, as did the single assessment. Those were carried out at times of the student's choosing within a particular window. The assessment version contained mainly the same question stems as the practice, but with different randomizations there. But from about 2016 onwards, yes, we did put in a couple of new questions. 19801, that's 0B1 to foundation year. We had the diagnostic follow-up, which used Stack. The diagnostic exercise at the beginning of the semester told us were there particular topics that particular students needed to do some more work on, and we were able to use Stack to carry out the assessment part of the individualized program of work that we allocated everybody. But for the remaining ones, yes, we carried out written quizzes at the ends of certain of the tutorials during the semester. So this was previously, prior to 2020, it was a mixture of Stack and traditional type coursework. In our course to second year electrical engineers, yes, we have for some time carried out 2 Stack assignments for those students. So that's where we'd started from, but as 2020 progressed, it became clear that yes, everything would have to change. March to June 2020, quick move online, no in-person events. I wouldn't quite go as far as to say make it up as you're going along, but certainly we did have to react quickly and to produce new forms of teaching for the students on really quite short timescales. As far as 19662 was concerned, which was running at that point, coursework 1 could run as normal, and indeed coursework 2 ran as normal at a time where everything else was anything but normal. So I've described coursework 2 there as an island of normality. And then when it came to exams, that particular summer, June 2020, at Manchester, exams were cancelled, and they were replaced by formative exercises. We didn't have large numbers of students taking up those formative exercises, and those were carried out using traditional written means. If March to June 2020 could be considered make it up as you're going along, then the academic year 2020 to 21 certainly could not. Things were planned to a considerable level of detail. Videos and review sessions replaced the traditional lectures. All students were taught online. There had been hopes of having some classes on campus, but for various reasons that did not happen. Let's look at coursework for the 2 semester 1 courses during the autumn of 2020. For 2E1, second year electricals, 2 pieces of coursework taking place online as previously. As far as Maths 0B1 was concerned, diagnostic follow-up, yes, that was able to continue as normal, but the other tests, of course, they couldn't be carried out in the way they'd been carried out in previous years, and we moved them online using Stack. In all cases, reasonable time windows, practice and assessment versions using randomized coefficients, as indeed we'd always done. But simply moving things online didn't simply mean doing them without changes. Let's have a look at a couple of questions from 0B1. Here we see one particular question from 2019. The students were given an expression to put into partial fractions form. They wrote their working and their answer in the box. Now, a question like this was relatively easy to put into Stack form. We probably already had a particular Stack question which would do the job here. But let's have a look at another question here from 2019. We had asked the students to plot a particular graph. So we're coming to the conclusion that yes, there are some questions which would involve the students actually showing their working or showing a graph. So as a result of that, there were a few questions which used Stack but involved uploading a file for later human marking. So here we see an example of a question from 2020. Plot a rough sketch showing the function below and its derivative. So what the student needs to produce is a graph, and while I'm sure that there are ways of getting the students to input what is subsequently turned into a graph in Stack, that's not the approach that we took here. We asked them to upload a file, and then of course after the quiz it would be human marked, but the student would see the solution for their question. Each student got a different randomized curve with, of course, a different appropriate derivative here. They could see their curve and their derivative along with, yes, what's some slightly generic comments at the bottom here, but the markers could also see their curve and the derivative that they should have had and compare it with what they had produced. So it did involve some human marking, but it could be done in a way that it was all done through Stack, recorded through Stack, and was not excessively time consuming. The beginning of 2021 took us into exam season, and the 2 first semester courses took slightly different approaches here. Now, at last year's conference, Igor gave a talk about his fully automated exam, including 1 question with a scanned solution, 1 question with text, but the students would get all of their own coefficients there, would carry this one out in their own locations at a specific time. Again, using Stack. Okay, we did have to use staggered starts for Stack. Some of the setup at Manchester means that the e-learning team were not confident about having more than about 100 starts within a 5-minute period, so we did have some staggering going on there, but this seemed to work well. The foundation year exam, it was actually a hybrid. On the same day, we had a 1-hour Stack paper and a 1-hour written, scanned and uploaded paper. So we had those on the same day. Different approaches, yes, there were different approaches across the various papers there. Part of it was that, yes, it's excellent to be using e-assessment, but sometimes, yes, we would like to see the working there. And while not without its detractions, the scanned and uploaded paper allows students to do just that. One question that was on the 0B1 stack paper was as here. Students are asked for an even function satisfying a couple of different conditions here. We see this particular student has put something in involving trig, and of course has been marked correct, although the stored answer that the computer had was of course one of many other functions that satisfy the conditions there, so we were able to use the flexibility of stack there. We found that the exam season worked well with those particular papers. Progressing further through 2021 and our second semester course to the mechanical, aerospace and civil engineers, the coursework went ahead as it had done recently, a couple of stack assignments. The exam, however, this was different from, say, the 2019 exam. It consisted of, well, it had always been a 2-hour exam. This year it was split into a 1-hour written and scanned paper and a 1-hour stack paper on the same day. And this seemed to work well. There were a few instances while marking the written part that I had my suspicions about the independence of certain answers that I'd seen from different students, but I felt there was nothing that I could take further forward there, nothing that seemed to affect the same paper on more than one question, for example. And so to academic year 2021 to 22. The university aspired to be able to carry out in-person teaching again, and it was a case of the various new developments that we'd created over the last couple of years to be able to take them into the classroom. In-person teaching was indeed carried out, that we only lost a couple of days towards the end of December with Omicron coming in, but the rest of the academic year could be carried out with classes in person. One interesting development, though, is that some students in some departments were given the option of studying remotely, so that we had dual delivery of various classes. This affected the semester 1 teaching, but the semester 1 January exams, together with all of the semester 2 activities, all students were expected to be on campus for these. So the coursework in autumn of 2021 went fairly similarly, with appropriate incremental developments to that which happened in autumn of 2020. That would be the case for both the foundation year and electrical engineering of our courses that we're following here. And when it came to the exam, well, 29681, second year electrical engineering, again, it was a case of this was a fully electronic exam paper run using stack. The difference from the previous year was this one was also now invigilated within computer cluster. The foundation year paper was a hybrid exam in that there were two different components. Early in the day, the students would take a 1-hour written invigilated paper, so this was returning to the tradition there, but for 1 hour rather than 2. And then they had, in the afternoon, a 1-hour stack assignment. This could be done in locations of their choice. We did make sure that you can see between 10:45 and 2 p.m. if they did need to travel some distance, for example, going home on a commuter distance, then they were able to do that. I suppose it's fair to say that this year the 2E1 paper proved a little bit unpopular with students. Somehow it seemed that although the marks were not particularly low, some of the students took badly to invigilated conditions. Whether this was invigilation in a cluster or whether it was simply a return to invigilation, that remains to be seen there. But we do look at the possibility of carrying out invigilation for at least one of the pieces of coursework for autumn of 2022. Spring of 2022 saw coursework for Maths 1M2, couple of stack assignments. As previously, the setup of this is fairly routine by this point, but the exam for that course, yes, that was a new departure again, taking advantage of the facilities involved in things being on campus. So this was a hybrid paper, but two components invigilated and examined together. So during a 2-hour exam, the students would take a stack assignment designed to last 1 hour and a written paper designed to last 1 hour. All the times that I mention, if for students with extra time, yes, they get the extra time. So it was the two different types of paper being carried out at the same time. Now, while at this relatively early stage it does seem to have given acceptable results, one very noticeable thing was actually the working for the stack paper. Because, of course, the students were carrying out the two different types of paper at the same time, it would be possible that parts of the working between the two could get mixed up. However, the students did seem remarkably disciplined in terms of putting the working for the stack questions in one book and the working for the written questions in a different book, with, of course, one being marked and the other one not being marked, but retained just in case there are any issues of students not segregating between the two books. But looking at the working for the stack paper, it seems to be written to the same level of detail as for the written paper. So this does raise some interesting questions about just how the students do set their work out there. Perhaps we could say it's excellent that they're setting it out to the same standard that they would do so when they're presenting the work to others, as is what happens with a written paper, rather than just scrolling something down that is meaningful to them and will be meaningful to them in an hour or two in case they want to look at it again. So that raises a very interesting point. But this, of course, takes us up to the present day. We can see some more course units where automated assessment has happened in recent exams, but which may or may not be moving back to more traditional assessment. One course where a reasonable amount of use has been made of stack recently, but which may revert to traditional form. A course to materials where Blackboard has been used and may continue to be used. A maths course on algebraic structures. This had had exams where students had written and scanned material. It had been the case that work about stating definitions or theorems had not been included. It's not quite clear what the form would be for 2023 yet. Similarly, there's one on differentiable manifolds where the scanned system has been used and where the lecturer is keen that it does go forward to the future in this form. So it does seem that yes, some courses, some papers may move back to more traditional forms of assessment. and reasons for this vary. In some cases, there are what we could call knock-on issues from malpractice on uninvigilated take-home written exams. We probably would not call this e-assessment for the purposes of this meeting, but somehow it does seem, if this kind of thing happens, it tends to put a black mark on anything which is e-learning. Sometimes it can be difficult when writing questions to write in such a way that all sensible answers worthy of some credit will actually be picked up in a potential response tree or via multiple choice. Of course, the subject matter is important. For some subjects, it really is very important to ask about bookwork or statements of theorems. And sometimes it's simply a case of colleagues find it easier to work on paper than on screen, or have various other attachments to traditional means of assessment. So we've seen that many different modes of assessment have been used of late. I believe some of those modes enhance the assessment activities that we're doing, and many courses will continue to use such modes. But we do see, and we've seen the reasons why some courses are likely in their assessment to return to more traditional modes of assessment. So Igor and I would like to thank various colleagues who have also contributed data for this. Thank you.
Lovely. Now it's time for questions. If you have a question, please post it on the Moodle site, the link that Chris has shared with us earlier. I'm just going to refresh that page, see if we already have some questions. Yeah, it seems we already have some questions. First, we have one from Tim. It's regarding split exams. So the question reads, in a normal exam with more than one section, students can themselves decide how to divide their time between the sections, and indeed perhaps return to review section 1 if they find they have additional time at the end. In a split exam, where 1 hour is for stack, 1 hour is for written, students don't have opportunity for that. Was that a problem?
Yes, hopefully you can hear me. Yeah, it's quite interesting that the plan that I'd gone in with was that the first hour would be for stack, and then the second hour would be for the written work. As it happened, I was warned by the e-learning team that the invigilators would not be able to enforce the fact that they couldn't use stack, and I was discouraged from actually using the 1 hour time limit there. So they did, in this particular exam, end up blurring themselves. It's not quite what I intended, but it may well be that for next year I decide, yes, they can just spend any point of this 2 hours on either paper there. That may well be what we do for next year.
Thank you, Pauline. The next question we have is from Stephen. Online versus on paper performance. Do you have any thoughts on studies appearing to show that students underperform when taking an online test compared with on paper? Is this something we should be concerned about? Maybe giving the students an answer book and expecting them to write out working for online tests mitigates any negative effects.
Well, that's an interesting one. Yes, I mean, some students clearly have expressed anxieties about doing things online, and obviously what we've tried to do is give them sufficient practice in during their coursework, or making practice papers available to them. but in terms of, yes, asking them to write things down, it does end up, I was quite surprised with what I saw over the last few weeks. I'm not really had time to assimilate it all yet. The effort that they went to write down their working on the stack questions. We're probably always a bit critical of students not showing enough working for written questions, but they were probably showing more working than I would have expected for the stack questions. So whether this is accidentally stumbling on what may be a possible way forward. We've always encouraged students to use pen and paper for their working there, but I suppose we'd envisage them just scribbling down a few things that were meaningful to them, but it seemed to be, that they were putting in the same level of detail that they would for when they're presenting their work to someone else. So that's something I found surprising, and obviously if this helps students, then fine.
Thank you. Zach, you have your hand up. Is it a question or something related to the discussion we are having right now?
No, kind of both, actually. So firstly, Colin, thank you very much for that talk. And it touched on quite a few areas that are very, very close to my heart, professionally. I think you mentioned the one thing about malpractice or academic integrity of assessments, which university-wide at Keele has been a bit of a bone of contention with various departments in the natural sciences, where it seems that the university wants to move away from traditional examinations, and the question is, what do we replace them with, and how can we guarantee the integrity of that assessment? And in fact, so much so that accreditation bodies have had to get in touch with the university and write to them and say, look, you risk losing accreditation if you go down this route. And also, you touched on the I feel that not all questions can be kind of asked through electronic assessment, and I'm currently trying to work through that and how to get a mix of e-assessed questions, totally e-assessed questions, and kind of more traditional paper-based mark questions actually within an electronic assignment. And I was wondering if you kind of thought about that, perhaps that approach.
Well, yes, I mean, probably both Igor and I would have done in recent years would to have papers which were mainly the traditional stack questions, which would be automatically marked, but have the occasional question which would involve students, for example, scanning something, uploading it, human marking. It's of course, it's a time-consuming thing to deal with all those, but maybe not quite. It's a kind of thing you get into a good routine on, and it seems a lot of it is just getting into a good routine about what information to bring up at which times on, and have several screens available to help there. So I think that's, it does make a good combination, and of course it can be randomized so that students aren't all dealing with exactly the same question. I think what we found, and some colleagues were particularly adamant about this, that the default replacement for exams over the university has been a static paper that the students would complete in their own time, uninvigilated, would scan and upload, sometimes with really quite long timescales involved. And you could say it's almost just inviting them to collaborate with each other on that. And unfortunately, I think some of the shortcomings of that have ended up smearing anything which is a bit more clever than that as well, which I think is really quite unfortunate.
Yeah, I take your point there. But sorry, just to answer Chris's question, what I've been doing on web work is I've been giving students a question by which they part of the question they put in a numerical answer, but they also in a paragraph answer they post a link to their network drive where a PDF document is stored, which I can go through and then check the workings. So that's the mix I'm kind of experimenting with at the moment, and then hopefully it'll be the kind of what I want to do then is have mostly kind of just numerical answered questions which are purely electronic, and then a couple of long form questions where they've got electronic answers but also they've got to show their workings. Sorry, does that answer your question there, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, we were doing mock exams starting in 2018 because the time period between the end of semester and the exam for my first semester course is often days, and there's no way we could run a mock exam. So we did a combination of stack questions with students typing or uploading their answer. And we told the students that nobody would ever look at these answers, right? This is a practice for your benefit. You know, you mark them yourselves basically with the work solution and then ask us if you need to, but we're never going to even look at this. And I was amazed the quality and quantity of answers that students gave. And it gave me a lot more confidence when 2000 came along that would be a usable format. So if you're not confident with it, try it with a mock exam where there are no stakes and see what the students do, because that worked really well for us.
Yeah, I've personally on the course I run on the foundation here at Keele. It's a physics course or a couple of physics modules. We've really struggled with engagement. So what we found is, and it tends to be the received wisdom around the university. If it's not worth marks, the students don't engage. So.
Hugh Burkhardt ran the Shell Centre, which is a mass education centre in Nottingham, and it was highly respected and did a huge amount of really interesting stuff with school maths. And he said, we need tests worth teaching to. So that's just inevitable, and it's a reality. So, okay, we'll just roll with it. Make the marks count. I mean, that's what you want.
Yeah. So now the kind of thing that I'm doing now is obviously they get homework each week, and that's where all those homeworks get grouped together into what's called a portfolio, and that goes forward to a final mark. So we get feedback from the students who complain about deadlines and too many deadlines in assessment that they miss. So they get the whole semester to do all these questions, and we just constantly remind them to say, look, do these weekly. Don't let all these question sets pile up, because you'll never get through them at the end of the semester. But the timing is flexible. You do the questions as you see fit and when you see fit.
I have a question for you, Jack. Do you use these portfolio sort of assessments for formative feedback, or do you just look at them at the end of the semester?
Generally, yeah. Some of the questions I do give formative feedback throughout the semester on, and say, look, you can improve this by improving the layout here, being a little bit more verbose here, state what you mean. So I do give feedback on those, and I plan to expand those that amount of questions. But I've only got a limited set of those. So sorry, I've lost my track now. Yeah, sorry, did that answer your question?
Yeah. Because this has to do with something that came up recently at our university. We just had results from our student experience survey, and it seems they wanted those sort of feedback within the semester, in the when the teaching was going on. So that's
Excuse me, I'm working from home. I've just got to let the dog out.
No worries. So we have another question for Colin. It's from Chris Sanguine. To what extent have you changed the style of questions? We have experimented with alternative question formats such as reading comprehension and other activities. And while I'm still finding these challenging to write, lack of experience on my part, I think it has real promise in rounding out an online assessment, formative or summative. I'm just going to paste the same question in chat in case it helps.
Yes, let me look at this one. The style of the questions, I suppose, yes, we've had a basic style of question that we've been using for a few years, adding more and more to it, of course. Reading comprehension, it's something I've not really gone down that route. I mean, it's always a case of yes, there seem to be more possibilities opening up, but a lot of the time I wouldn't quite say we're firefighting on what we're doing rather than expanding into new possible fields there. But yes, I mean, Chris, say the development that you mentioned earlier in the meeting about having the ability to get students to just type in a few words and then be able to give some marks or comments based on that. That's one that I saw as an exciting thing. I'm not quite sure on the timing about when that will roll through to Manchester. I'll need to speak to our e-learning people about that. But I suppose the answer to the question is we've not done a great deal, but of course I don't rule that out for the future.
Thank you, Colin. The next question we have is from Rebecca Gill. It's about scanned exam submissions. She has written, I'm interested in what tools you used for take-home exams where students submitted scanned work. Did you give them any particular tools or guidance about how to prepare their scan doc? How did you have them submit? How did markers mark the scanned submissions? Thank you in advance.
Yes, thanks for that one. I mean, I suppose when we had exams that were written and scanned by the students, I mean, obviously, yes, they would just start with fairly normal bits of paper. I don't know too much about the actual software that was used to turn that into a PDF, but because this was mainly handled at the central level, and then at a departmental level, it tended to be the professional service staff that were dealing with this, but it would interact quite well with the cameras on most mobile phones and so on. And yes, it seems to produce a good PDF. I mean, obviously I can make inquiries about this. On the marking level, yes, we tended to use banks of files on OneDrive, which again, by having questions and solution and student attempts on different screens and using the right kind of clicking, you could get through at a reasonable rate. I mean, I think the thing that I found most infuriating was changing the pen between the various things where you wanted to make temporary comments as well as more permanent ones in a different color. It worked well when you had several different markers marking different questions on a particular exam, but just occasionally it ended up duplicating the whole thing, which led to problems there. But as I say, the exact details of the software involved, that tended to be at central level, so I need to make inquiries before I could let you know too much about that.
Thank you, Colin, for a very lively discussion and a very interesting presentation that I'm hoping we all are going to use the experience that you have had in our future. Jack, did you have a question? We don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, I just want to, Colin, with the electronic marking, how did you find the workflow as opposed to more traditional paper-based marking?
You mean the the bits of scanned work within electronic form or the fully electronic one?
Yeah, the mechanics of marking electronically, collating the marks, and standardizing, and that sort of thing.
Okay, the marking of scanned work when it was one or two questions within a piece of coursework. Yes, it tended to be. I'd be able to get the whole lot of them and just make my way through them one by one. There were, I think, various ways of opening and closing the various attempts. That it started off very slowly, but then I managed to get into various good routines there. I've not used that particular form for an exam. I'm hoping Igor may be on, because that, of course, had happened in his exam, that he had marked parts within that. When it came to marking, fully scanned exams, then I would say I got myself into a situation where it wasn't really that different from marking the bits of paper there. I think it went at about the same pace. Others say it goes faster. Others say it goes very much slower.
Yeah.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Jack, for the question. I'm now going to hand over to one of our organizers for a few words. Chris, would you unmute yourself, please?
Thanks, Farhan. Thank you, Colin, for the talk today. Yeah, we thought this would be a good opportunity, given it's the last talk of the conference, just to do a bit of closing admin, a few thank yous. So I'm not going to talk for long. I did want to just say I've really enjoyed the past 2 weeks. I think today's session has sort of echoed the rest of the conference. We've had interesting talk and some great discussion as well. I've really enjoyed, in particular, the free chat sessions. That little bit of time in the program to talk. We've had some really good discussions. So yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's come along, participated in the conference. We occasionally get asked for like a certification of participation for various reasons. So if you need that, do send an email to eames@ncl.ac.uk and we can sort that out for you. Big thank you to all of our speakers. We've had some fantastic talks on a really broad range of subjects. So yeah, thank you to our speakers. And you can, if you missed anything during the conference, Christian has been putting up slides and videos, so please do go and check those out. So that's on the programs page. And a big thanks to our organising committee as well. So there's a lot of people, quite a few people in our organising committee have been involved with chairing and otherwise helping out. So thank you, and in particular to Christian, who again has been pulling many of the strings behind the conference. Christian had to leave about 10 minutes ago. He's multitasking with some childcare today. So, but big thank you, Christian. He says goodbye. I just wanted to point out one page on our Moodle site, which we'll post in the chat, which is the participation survey. It's at the bottom of the talks page on Moodle, or the direct link in the chat there. And on the survey, so we'd be really grateful if you could fill it out. One of the things we wanted to open a little bit of discussion about, which we'll not have time for here, but maybe this afternoon, was about the format. So we'd be grateful for your thoughts on the format. We've run this conference in this morning, afternoon, online format now for 3 years. And we'd like to get your thoughts about the future of the conference and the format in particular. So please do take the time to fill that in if you can. There was a suggestion that we might have a discussion after the talk today about the format, but actually we've had some great other conversation instead. And I'd rather not get stuck into that with Christian not here. So if people are around for the free chat session this afternoon, then this will be one topic that we can discuss. And then the other is that there was a question yesterday about relative merits of different e-assessment systems. And I think Chris Angwin and Christian will be able to pick up on some of that in this afternoon's session as well. So I hope there's some things there to look forward to for the afternoon session today, if you can join us. Yeah, and that's all. So I just wanted to say a big thanks again, and I'll pass back to Farhan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And as Chris was saying, we have our final session this afternoon, 4 o'clock UK time. That's GMT +1 now. Convert to your time zone and please join in. I think we had a number of questions, possible discussions that came up in previous sessions that we are going to have a chat about in that session. So thank you all for joining in this morning, and we will see you this afternoon. Thank you. Have a great day.